Welcome, dear listener, to the Whispering Shadows, where the line between dreams and nightmares blurs. As you drift into the unknown, remember that some whispers are better left unheard. But here, they're impossible to ignore. If you enjoy this tale and haven't fallen asleep yet, or are brave enough to stay awake, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Let's see if you can make it through to the end without a single scream. In the remote valley of Willowbrook, an abandoned manor stands shrouded in mystery. Locals speak of curses, of people who vanish within its walls. But to Dr. Isaac Mercer, a rationalist and skeptic, Willowbrook is just an old building, until he receives a letter from his missing colleague, Dr. Eleanor Hayes. Her message reads, "I've found something extraordinary at Willowbrook. You must come. Trust me, Isaac, the truth is here." Determined to find answers about Eleanor's disappearance, Isaac makes the long journey to the manor. As he arrives, rain begins to pour, the forest around him growing darker. He steps through the rusted iron gates, feeling the weight of the manor's silence. The towering building looms, nearly swallowed by shadows and overgrown ivy. Inside, the air is stale, every surface covered in dust. The manor is eerily well preserved, as though its previous residents left in a hurry, yet no one has returned for decades. Portraits of forgotten faces line the hallways, each pair of painted eyes seeming to follow him as he walks. In a small study, he finds a journal with Eleanor's name on it. She wrote about her first days in Willowbrook, her excitement about the research, her interest in unraveling the manor's mysteries. But as he reads further, Isaac notices a change in her tone. She writes of an oppressive presence, of voices in the night that seem to echo through the empty halls, whispers that grew louder as the days passed. The journal ends abruptly, mid-sentence, leaving him with more questions than answers. As he settles into one of the bedrooms for the night, Isaac tries to shake off the unease he feels. The rain outside intensifies, the sound steady and rhythmic, lulling him into a restless sleep. He wakes suddenly, disoriented, to the sound of creaking floorboards. Someone, or something, is moving just outside his door. The sound grows louder, closer, then stops entirely. After a long silence, Isaac musters the courage to check the hallway. He finds no one there, only a small, folded piece of paper lying on the floor. The note, written in Eleanor's handwriting, reads, "If you're here, it's already too late." Unsettled, Isaac decides to explore the manor further at dawn. He moves through its endless corridors, every step echoing in the stillness. Strange symbols mark the walls, carved deeply into the stone, shapes that seem to shift when he stares at them too long. The air grows colder as he descends deeper into the manor. Near a darkened corner of the first floor, he finds a narrow staircase, leading down into what appears to be a hidden part of the building. He hesitates, feeling a chill run down his spine. Just as he's about to descend, he hears a faint voice, a whisper that sounds like Eleanor calling his name from the shadows below. The rain pounds against the windows as Isaac stands at the top of the staircase, his heart pounding. Isaac stands frozen at the top of the dark staircase, Eleanor's faint whisper still echoing in his mind. He hesitates, gripping the cold, worn rail as he peers into the inky darkness below. Just as he convinces himself to turn back, another whisper floats up, a single word that chills him to the bone. "Help." Determined to find the source of the voice, he takes a deep breath and steps down. The air grows colder with each step, thick with a dampness that smells of earth and decay. The rain outside becomes a faint, steady patter as he descends deeper into the bowels of the manor. The staircase spirals down farther than he'd anticipated, until he finds himself in a low-ceilinged cellar. The room is lit only by a single, flickering lantern mounted on the wall. The dim light reveals shelves filled with dusty relics, odd trinkets, pieces of broken pottery, and ancient books. In the far corner of the room, he notices something peculiar, a doorway, partially hidden behind heavy drapes. When he pulls the drapes back, he reveals a small, narrow room filled with mirrors. They're old and tarnished, their surfaces barely reflective. As he steps inside, he realizes the mirrors form a circle, each angled slightly inward, creating the eerie illusion that they're all watching him. Suddenly, he hears a rustling sound from behind him, followed by soft, almost rhythmic breathing. He turns, heart pounding, but sees only his own reflection in the mirrors. Yet, as he looks closer, something odd catches his eye. The reflection directly opposite him doesn't match his movements. It's a slight delay, like a distorted echo. The reflected version of himself begins to move independently, its eyes darkening as its mouth opens in a silent scream. He stumbles backward, breaking the circle of mirrors. For a moment, the room feels as though it's spinning, and he shuts his eyes to steady himself. When he opens them, the reflection has returned to normal. Isaac steps back from the room, shaken. He can't help but feel the eyes of the mirrors following him as he exits the cellar. But his sense of unease grows even more as he hears Eleanor's voice again, this time closer, pleading, "Isaac, please, find me." He pushes onward, exploring deeper into the manor. In a large dining room covered with dusty tapestries, he notices something odd. The candles on the dining table have recently been lit. The faint, charred smell of burnt wicks lingers in the air. Beside one of the place settings, he finds another note, written in Eleanor's handwriting. "They're watching." Isaac feels a shiver run down his spine. He turns, certain he'll find someone standing behind him, but the room is empty. Every instinct tells him to leave, but a strange compulsion pushes him forward, urging him to understand what happened to Eleanor. He feels her presence in every room, a lingering sadness that seems to seep from the walls. As he continues through the manor, he discovers a hidden staircase that leads to an attic. The steps creak beneath him as he climbs, the rain outside growing louder with each step. At the top, he finds an expansive, shadow-filled attic filled with old furniture, trunks, and covered paintings. One painting catches his eye. It's a large portrait of a woman who bears a striking resemblance to Eleanor, though she's dressed in Victorian attire. Her expression is solemn, almost haunted, and as he stares, he notices a faint movement in the painting, a twitch of her hand, a slight shift of her gaze. He blinks, and the painting is still again. On a small table beneath the painting, he finds an old phonograph, its needle resting on a record. He cautiously winds it up, and a scratchy voice fills the attic, echoing off the rafters. It's Eleanor's voice, faint but unmistakable. She speaks in a calm, measured tone, but there's a tension in her words. "If you're hearing this, then I didn't make it out. They know I'm here, and they'll know you're here too. If you want to escape, you have to find the heart of the manor, the place where the shadows meet." Isaac stands there, absorbing her words, when suddenly the attic door slams shut. The sound echoes, and the shadows around him seem to shift, stretching toward him. Panicked, he races down the staircase, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, as though something is chasing him. He makes it to the bottom just in time, slamming the door shut behind him. Breathless and shaken, he pauses in the hall, but the whispers have returned, louder this time, coming from every corner of the room. Leave. Leave before it's too late. The voices blend with the pounding rain, creating a symphony of despair and warning. Feeling trapped, Isaac stumbles into a small sitting room, hoping for a moment of reprieve. There, on an old desk, he finds Eleanor's journal again, only now it has new entries, ones he hadn't seen before. The handwriting is frantic, the ink smeared as though written in haste. They watch from the mirrors. They control the shadows. I can't tell who's real anymore, or if I'm still myself. The manor takes something from you, piece by piece. Isaac, if you find this, don't trust what you see. The words send a chill through him, and as he closes the journal, he notices his own reflection in the window across from him. But something is wrong. His reflection doesn't look quite like him. The eyes are darker, sunken, as though whatever entity haunts Willowbrook has begun to creep into his own soul. Isaac hears footsteps approaching down the hall, slow and deliberate. He prepares to confront whoever or whatever approaches, his heart pounding as he waits. The shadow moves closer, just outside the door, and the rain outside crescendos as he stands in silence, trapped in the depths of Willowbrook Manor. Sock stands frozen, his gaze fixed on the shadow outside the door. It looms, shifting slightly, as though something just beyond his line of sight is watching him. He feels a cold dread seep into his bones. The sound of rain muffled now as if the manor itself is holding its breath. Gathering his courage, he takes a step forward and opens the door, only to find the hallway empty. Yet he feels he is no longer alone. Isaac presses onward, his only thought to find whatever is at the heart of this cursed place. The journal's warnings echo in his mind. Don't trust what you see. Every corner feels like a trap, every reflection in the dark windows a twisted version of himself. As he ventures deeper, he notices the shadows growing darker, denser, almost solid, as though something tangible lurks within them. The corridor leads him to a grand staircase, one that spirals down into darkness. He recognizes this staircase from Eleanor's descriptions. She had called it the stairs to nowhere, a hidden part of the manor that supposedly defied logic, leading people deeper into the manor's belly without ever reaching a true end. Isaac hesitates, his mind screaming to turn back, but he presses forward, descending into the unknown. The descent feels endless, the air thick and cold, until he reaches a door at the bottom. When he opens it, he finds himself in a vast library. The walls are lined with towering shelves, filled with ancient books and artifacts. There is a musty scent of decay, and a heavy silence fills the room, broken only by the occasional crackle of lightning outside. As he steps inside, he notices the layout of the room seems almost maze-like, with narrow pathways winding between the towering bookshelves. He picks up one of the books, curious, but the words are in a language he doesn't recognize, the script winding and twisted. When he flips to the last page, he sees his own name scrawled in the margins, alongside a date, today's date. He drops the book, heart pounding, feeling as though the walls are closing in on him. The rain outside grows louder, battering against the high windows, creating shadows that twist and bend in unnatural ways. Just as he tries to collect his thoughts, he hears a faint rustling sound, like someone moving between the shelves. Isaac slowly follows the sound, feeling the weight of each step. As he rounds a corner, he catches a glimpse of a figure, an old man, hunched over, running his fingers along the spines of the books, muttering to himself in a low voice. The man's clothes are tattered, his skin pale and worn, as though he's been here far longer than any normal person should. Isaac tries to approach him, but as he does, The man freezes and looks up, his eyes wide and fearful. "You shouldn't be here," the man whispers, his voice a trembling echo. "It knows you're here now." Before Isaac can ask who it is, the old man scurries away, vanishing into the maze of shelves. Isaac tries to follow him, but the pathways twist and turn, disorienting him. He finds himself going in circles, the same rows repeating over and over. In his frustration, he nearly shouts, but stops when he hears something, a low, rhythmic breathing coming from somewhere close by. Following the sound, he finds a small alcove with a single large chair facing away from him. A figure is seated in it, a woman with her back turned, her head tilted down as though lost in thought. His heart pounds as he realizes it's Eleanor, or something that looks like her. He approaches slowly, but when he's only a few steps away, she lifts her head and turns to face him. Her face is pale, her eyes hollow and filled with something dark and unknowable. "Isaac," she says softly, her voice a mere whisper. "Why did you come here?" Stunned, Isaac struggles to form a response. "Eleanor, I thought you were lost. I came to find you." She gives a sad smile, her eyes distant. "I am lost, Isaac. I'm part of this place now. We all are. Once you come here, it doesn't let you go." He reaches out, but she fades before his eyes, dissolving like mist. The chair is empty now, and a sense of dread washes over him as he realizes she might never have truly been there. The library suddenly feels colder, the walls closer, pressing in on him as if to trap him forever. Isaac turns and sprints back the way he came, heart racing, desperate to find his way out. But every turn seems to lead him deeper, the shelves twisting and shifting as if they have a mind of their own. Just when he thinks he'll never escape, he stumbles into a small room tucked away at the end of a hidden passage. It's an old study, with a large cracked mirror on one wall and a worn leather journal on a desk. The journal, like the others, is filled with strange writings. But this one has drawings as well. Sketches of the manor's hallways, staircases, and even faces that resemble the figures he's seen. And on the final page, a haunting message in Eleanor's handwriting. "Once you enter Willowbrook, it becomes part of you. Every room is a trap, every shadow a watcher." Isaac feels a chill as he glances up at the mirror. His reflection stares back at him, but something is wrong. The face looking back isn't entirely his own. It's twisted, haunted, with dark, sunken eyes and a faint smile that doesn't match his expression. He reaches out to touch the mirror, and his reflection's hand moves to meet his. But when he touches the glass, it's cold solid, except for a moment when he feels the faintest warmth, like something living on the other side. He jerks his hand back, but the reflection lingers, staring at him with that haunting smile, before finally fading into darkness. The library around him seems to shift, the walls bending, until he's standing back in the hallway, as though he's never left. The rain outside has intensified, and he realizes he's lost all sense of time. How long has he been here? Hours? Days? The whispers return, louder and closer, filling the silence with their warnings. Isaac tries to ignore them, pushing forward, desperate to find a way out. At last, he stumbles upon a grand ballroom, its walls lined with mirrors and windows that reflect the storm outside. The rain lashes against the glass, and lightning illuminates the room in brief, startling flashes. He feels a presence watching him, and as he turns, he sees figures in the mirrors, distorted versions of himself, Eleanor, and others he doesn't recognize, all staring back with hollow eyes. A voice echoes through the room, filling him with a deep, consuming dread. You cannot escape, Isaac. You belong to us now. He turns, but the door has vanished, the walls closing in around him. The reflections move closer, stepping out of the mirrors, surrounding him. He backs away, but there's nowhere left to run. The shadows envelop him, their voices filling his mind, their hollow eyes drawing him in until he feels himself fading, becoming one of them. In the final moments, the rain outside fades, leaving only silence as Isaac's mind sinks into darkness. Willowbrook Manor stands silent once more, as though no one had ever disturbed its halls. Isaac's mind drifts in and out, lost between the thin line of reality and nightmare. He awakens in the same grand ballroom, but everything has changed. The once glittering chandeliers are coated in cobwebs, the mirrors are cracked and stained, and the rain outside has stopped, leaving only an unsettling silence. Struggling to gather his thoughts, he realizes he's not alone. Shadows line the room, moving slowly, their figures distorted and faceless. They seem to hum with a dark energy, a silent invitation for him to join them. The last thing he remembers is the reflection of Eleanor, her haunted eyes, her warning that once you're in Willowbrook, it becomes a part of you. Isaac stands, his legs shaky, but his will stronger than ever. He knows he's on the brink of something, either escape or eternal entrapment. He recalls Eleanor's journal and the mention of the heart of the manor. There must be a way to reach it, to find the truth behind this cursed place and perhaps free himself, and maybe even Eleanor. The ballroom doors are locked, but a soft creak draws his attention to a hidden passage that's opened in the wall. Shadows seem to beckon him forward, and with no other option, he enters the dark corridor. The walls are lined with strange symbols carved into the stone, symbols he vaguely recognizes from Eleanor's journals. They glow faintly, pulsing as though alive, leading him deeper. Isaac walks for what feels like hours, the path twisting and spiraling in impossible ways. His sense of direction vanishes, and he realizes the manor's architecture defies logic, bending space and time to trap those within it. Just as his hope begins to wane, he reaches a large, circular room, the heart of Willowbrook Manor. The room is unlike any other he's seen, bathed in an eerie, pulsing light that seems to come from nowhere. In the center stands an ornate stone pedestal, atop which lies an old, leather-bound book bound by chains. As he approaches, he hears Eleanor's voice, faint but clear. "The book is the key, Isaac. But be warned, it demands a price." With trembling hands, he reaches out and touches the book. The chains uncoil, and the room grows colder, as though all warmth and life are being sucked away. Isaac opens the book to find a series of entries, each detailing the lives of those who entered Willowbrook and were consumed by it. Their faces are etched into the pages, frozen in expressions of terror and despair. He flips to the final page and finds Eleanor's face staring back at him. Her entry is incomplete, ending with the same plea she left in her journal. "Isaac, if you're reading this, you must destroy the heart of Willowbrook. Only then can we be free." With her words echoing in his mind, Isaac realizes what he must do. He takes a nearby candelabrum, its flame flickering in the suffocating darkness, and holds it close to the ancient, worn pages of the book. As the flame catches, the room begins to shake, and the faces in the book start to scream, their cries filling the air. The shadows around him grow frantic, circling and closing in, but he stands his ground, watching as the book burns. The walls of the manor start to crack, and the floor trembles, the very foundation of Willowbrook shattering. Just as the fire consumes the last page, He hears Eleanor's voice one final time, soft and free of fear. "Thank you, Isaac." The room collapses around him, and as everything fades, he feels himself falling into darkness. Sock awakens outside, lying in the overgrown garden of Willowbrook Manor, the building now a charred, crumbling ruin. The first light of dawn breaks over the valley, and the manor is silent at last. He stands, feeling an odd emptiness within him, as though a part of him remains in those cursed halls, forever entwined with its secrets. With a heavy heart, Isaac turns and leaves, vowing never to return. The shadows of Willowbrook Manor now nothing more than a distant memory. Or so he hopes. As Isaac walks away from Willowbrook Manor, he feels an unshakable weight pressing down on him, as though he's leaving a piece of himself behind. The dawn light feels unfamiliar, colder, casting long shadows that stretch toward him. He tries to brush off the unease, forcing himself to believe he's finally free. But the silence that follows him feels more like a presence, a dark reminder of what he left behind. Over the next few weeks, Isaac returns to his life, trying to bury the memories of the manor. He moves through his days in a daze, haunted by fragments of his time there, the whispers, the shifting mirrors, Eleanor's pleading face. Nights are the worst. As soon as he closes his eyes, he's transported back to those shadowed halls, each dream feeling more vivid, more real, as though he never truly left. The dreams always end the same way, with him standing in the heart of the manor, the book open before him. Only this time, Eleanor's face stares back, her expression twisted with anger and sorrow. "You didn't save me," she whispers. "You only freed yourself." One night, Isaac is jolted awake by a sound, a soft scratching at his window. He sits up, his heart pounding, and looks outside. The street is empty, the trees still, but the sound persists. He opens the window, searching for the source, but finds nothing. As he closes it, he glances at his reflection and freezes. His face looks back at him, but there's something wrong. His eyes are darker, hollow, like the eyes of the shadows he saw in Willowbrook. He blinks, and his reflection returns to normal, but the encounter leaves him shaken. Over the next few days, the occurrences escalate. Objects move on their own, whispers fill his apartment late at night, and shadows seem to gather in corners, stretching toward him whenever he's not looking. He tries to convince himself it's all in his head, a lingering effect of his time in the manor, but deep down, he knows the truth. He may have left Willowbrook, but it hasn't left him. Desperate, he decides to research the manor, hoping to find answers or perhaps a way to end the haunting. He discovers that Willowbrook was once a convent, built centuries ago on land rumored to be cursed. The convent was eventually abandoned, and the building was transformed into a manor by a wealthy family. But each new occupant met a tragic end, disappearing without a trace or falling into madness. Legends say that the manor's heart was bound to an ancient relic hidden within its walls, a relic that required a sacrifice to maintain its power. Isaac realizes that burning the book may have broken the relic's hold on the manor, but not on him. It had marked him as one of its own, tethering him to its curse. He knows what he must do. He must return to Willowbrook and confront whatever remains within, to sever the connection once and for all. He arrives at Willowbrook Manor on a foggy night, the ruins barely visible in the mist. The air is thick with silence, as though the land itself is holding its breath, waiting for him. As he approaches, he feels a pull, a dark compulsion drawing him toward the crumbling entrance. He hesitates, but the memories of the hauntings, the shadows, and Eleanor's tortured face drive him forward. Inside, the manor is eerily silent. The walls are charred, the once grand hallways reduced to rubble, yet it feels as though the shadows are watching him, waiting. As he walks through the ruins, he hears faint whispers, the voices of those who were trapped here, including Eleanor's. They echo around him, filling his mind with fragments of their despair, their hopelessness, their longing for freedom. The path leads him back to the library, now a scorched shell. The bookshelves have collapsed, and the floor is covered in ash and debris. But in the center of the room, the pedestal where the cursed book once lay is intact, untouched by the flames. He approaches it, feeling the familiar, chilling presence of the shadows closing in around him. Suddenly, he feels a cold hand on his shoulder. He turns to find Eleanor standing there, her face pale and filled with sorrow. But this time, there's something else in her eyes: anger. "You promised you'd free me," she whispers, her voice barely audible. "You freed yourself, Isaac, but you left me here. You left all of us here." Isaac tries to explain, to tell her he thought burning the book would break the curse, but she shakes her head, her expression darkening. "The manor's heart is still alive, Isaac. You only wounded it. It needs another soul, a final offering, to sever its hold completely." Realization dawns on him, and he stumbles back, horrified. The manor had let him go because it knew he would return. It wanted him to bring another sacrifice, himself. He feels the shadows closing in, their whispers growing louder, filling his mind with visions of despair, of lives consumed by the manor's endless hunger. Eleanor steps forward, her face softening, her voice pleading. "You can end this, Isaac. You have to give it what it wants." Isaac looks around, feeling the weight of the souls trapped within the walls, their sorrow pressing down on him. He realizes that he can't leave again, not without condemning them all to an eternity of torment. He takes a deep breath, his fear replaced by a quiet resolve. He knows what he must do. He steps up to the pedestal, placing his hands on the cold stone. The shadows surge forward, surrounding him, their whispers filling his mind, their touch cold and consuming. He closes his eyes, surrendering to the darkness, feeling himself being pulled into the very heart of the manor. As his consciousness fades, he sees Eleanor's face one last time, her expression filled with gratitude and sorrow. "Thank you, Isaac," she whispers. "You've set us free." With his final breath, Isaac feels the weight of the curse lift, the shadows receding, their hold on the manor broken at last. The silence that follows is not one of despair, but of peace, as the spirits of Willowbrook are finally released. When dawn breaks, the ruins of Willowbrook Manor are empty, the shadows gone, the whispers silenced. The manor stands as a hollow shell, a monument to those who suffered within its walls, but free of the curse that bound it. And though no one remains to witness it, a faint breeze stirs the ashes, carrying with it the faintest whisper of gratitude, and a promise that no one will ever be trapped there again. As the years pass, the tale of Willowbrook Manor becomes a ghost story, a whispered legend told in hushed voices around campfires. Those who venture near the ruins often claim to feel an unsettling presence, a chill that lingers in the air, but no one has dared to enter since Isaac's disappearance. The townsfolk have almost forgotten the manor's cursed history, but for some, it remains an unhealed scar, a reminder of the souls lost within its walls. One rainy night, a young journalist named Claire arrives in the nearby town. Driven by curiosity and the desire to make a name for herself, she has been investigating paranormal sites and uncovering the mysteries behind haunted places. Willowbrook is her latest target, a manor abandoned for decades, rumored to be a place of unspeakable horror. Despite the warnings from locals, she can't resist the allure of the story, the challenge of unraveling its secrets. Claire gathers her equipment, an audio recorder, a flashlight, and a camera, and heads toward the manor under the cover of night. As she approaches, the silhouette of Willowbrook looms against the stormy sky, shrouded in mist and darkness. The rain falls steadily, soaking her to the bone, but she presses on, driven by a strange pull, as though the manor itself is calling her. When she reaches the front steps, she pauses, feeling a sense of foreboding. The air is thick, charged with an eerie energy that sends a shiver down her spine. She hesitates, a voice in her mind urging her to turn back, but she brushes it off. Taking a deep breath, she steps inside. The interior is cold and damp, the smell of mildew and decay filling the air. The once grand hallways are now empty, their walls cracked and covered in dust, but beneath the silence, she senses something alive, watching her. As she explores the manor, her footsteps echo down the halls, each sound amplified, as though the manor itself is amplifying her presence, making sure she knows she's not alone. Claire makes her way to the ballroom, where she's heard whispers of past tragedies, where the heart of the curse supposedly lies. She sets up her camera, carefully adjusting the lens to capture every corner of the room. Just as she begins her recording, a soft whisper fills the air. She freezes, her heart racing as she listens, but the voice fades, replaced by the steady patter of rain outside. She tries to shake off the feeling, convincing herself it's just her imagination, but as she continues filming, the whispers return, louder this time, overlapping and distorted. Words she can't quite make out, voices pleading, calling, accusing. She takes a deep breath, her fingers trembling as she holds the camera, determined to push forward. Hours pass, and Claire finds herself drawn deeper into the manor, pulled by the whispers, as though they are leading her somewhere. She reaches the library, where the air is thick and heavy, almost suffocating. In the center of the room stands the same pedestal where Isaac had burned the cursed book, but now something else rests upon it. A journal, old and worn, its cover cracked and stained. She picks up the journal, feeling a strange warmth radiate from it, a pulse like a heartbeat. She opens it, and to her shock, she finds that it is Isaac's journal. His notes are frantic, desperate, detailing his experience within Willowbrook, his encounter with Eleanor, and the horror of realizing he was trapped. The final entry stops abruptly, with a single sentence. The heart of Willowbrook is not gone. It only sleeps, waiting for a new soul. Claire's heart pounds as she realizes the weight of Isaac's words. The curse was never truly broken. It was only dormant, waiting for someone to reawaken it. And now, by stepping into the manor, by touching this journal, she has become the next link in the chain. Just as she tries to leave, the door to the library slams shut, and the air grows colder, the shadows stretching across the floor, circling her. The whispers become voices, each one distinct, filled with anger and sorrow. She hears Isaac pleading for freedom, Eleanor crying out for release, and countless others, their voices merging into a symphony of despair. In her panic, she drops the journal, the pages scattering across the floor, and she backs away, her hands shaking. The shadows begin to take form, the figures of those trapped within the manor, their faces twisted with fear and suffering. She sees Isaac among them, his eyes hollow, his expression one of resignation. "You came for answers," he whispers, his voice barely audible over the din. "Now, you must make a choice." Claire feels herself drawn toward the pedestal, her hands moving of their own accord, compelled by an unseen force. She realizes that Willowbrook is not just a place, it's a living entity, feeding off the souls of those who enter, binding them to its walls, its history. If she stays, she will become a part of it, just as Isaac and Eleanor did. But if she finds a way to escape, she may finally be able to end the curse. Desperate, she searches the room for any sign of an exit, her mind racing as the voices grow louder, each one pulling at her, draining her strength. She remembers Isaac's journal, his final words, and realizes there is only one way to break free. She must find the source of the curse, the relic that binds Willowbrook's heart, and destroy it completely. The shadows close in, reaching out to her, their cold hands brushing against her skin, but she pushes forward, determined. She recalls Isaac's mention of the heart of Willowbrook, and with a last burst of strength, she forces herself deeper into the manor, following a path she barely remembers. The walls twist and shift, the manor's layout changing, trying to confuse her, to trap her, but she presses on, guided by a flickering hope. Finally, she reaches a hidden chamber, a place untouched by time, filled with strange symbols carved into the stone. In the center of the room stands a pedestal, and on it rests an ancient amulet, pulsating with a dark energy. She knows without a doubt that this is the relic, the heart of Willowbrook. Summoning all her courage, Claire takes the amulet in her hands, feeling its power surge through her, filling her with memories of every soul it has claimed. She sees their lives, their fears, their final moments, and she feels the weight of their pain. With tears streaming down her face, she raises the amulet above her head and brings it down with all her strength, shattering it against the stone floor. A deafening silence fills the room, and for a moment, everything is still. Then, the walls begin to tremble, the floor cracks beneath her feet, and the shadows let out a final agonized scream as they are pulled into the void, their forms dissolving into nothingness. The curse that held Willowbrook is finally broken. Claire stumbles out of the chamber, the manor crumbling around her, but she feels a profound sense of peace. The whispers are gone, the shadows have faded, and the weight of the curse has lifted. As she steps outside, the rain has stopped, and the first light of dawn begins to break over the horizon. Exhausted but free, Claire leaves the ruins behind, vowing never to return. The town would remember Willowbrook Manor as a place of horror, but she knows the truth, that it is now a resting place for those who suffered within its walls, finally at peace. In the years that follow, Willowbrook is forgotten, swallowed by the forest and lost to time. But on quiet nights, when the rain falls softly, some say they can still hear faint whispers in the air, a final echo of the souls who once dwelled within its cursed halls, their voices a testament to a past now laid to rest. As decades passed, Willowbrook Manor faded into obscurity, its ruins buried beneath layers of ivy and forest growth, its story nearly forgotten. Those who remembered spoke of it only in whispers, passing the legend from one generation to the next. But time has a way of distorting memory, and in the absence of proof, the horrors of Willowbrook became myth, a ghost story told to thrill children on cold winter nights. Yet, some secrets refuse to stay buried. One autumn evening, a group of friends, Mia, Alex, Lucas, and Nora, were traveling through the countryside on a camping trip. Drawn by curiosity and a desire to explore, they ventured off the main road, following an old, overgrown trail. When they stumbled upon the ruins of Willowbrook Manor, they had no idea of the terror lying dormant beneath its crumbling walls. The manor stood silent, a skeletal reminder of a dark past. The windows were broken, the door barely hanging on its hinges, and vines crept over every surface, as if nature itself were trying to swallow the building whole. Mia, the most adventurous of the group, suggested they go inside, eager to explore the ruins and perhaps snap a few photos. The others hesitated, sensing a heavy presence around the manor, a chill that ran down their spines. But Mia's enthusiasm was infectious, and they found themselves following her inside, drawn into the eerie silence of Willowbrook. The entrance hall was dark, shadows clinging to every corner, the air thick with a damp, musty smell. Their footsteps echoed in the stillness, each sound amplified, as though the walls themselves were listening. As they moved deeper into the manor, they found strange markings on the walls, symbols that looked like they were scratched in haste, messages left behind by someone in a desperate attempt to communicate. Some were barely legible, but the words "trap" and "help" sent shivers down their spines. Alex, the skeptic, brushed it off as graffiti left by previous visitors, but Nora felt a gnawing unease growing inside her. The markings seemed too deliberate, too frenzied. She tried to voice her concerns, but Mia dismissed them, insisting they explore further. As they ventured down a narrow hallway, Lucas noticed something peculiar. A faint, rhythmic sound, like footsteps coming from somewhere deep within the manor. At first, he thought it was an echo, but the sound was steady, relentless, and it seemed to be getting closer. "Do you guys hear that?" Lucas whispered, his voice barely audible. The others paused, listening. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they seemed to come from right behind them. They turned, expecting to see someone, but the hallway was empty. A chill ran down Mia's spine, and she laughed nervously, trying to brush it off as a trick of their imagination. But the footsteps didn't stop. A shadow moved at the edge of their vision, darting down a side corridor. Lucas, heart pounding, decided to follow, convinced it was just a stray animal. But as he rounded the corner, he found the hallway empty, stretching into darkness. The air grew colder, the silence deeper, and an oppressive feeling settled over him, making it hard to breathe. When he rejoined the group, his face was pale, his hands trembling. "There's something here," he whispered, barely able to speak. "Something watching us." They decided to leave, their excitement replaced by a growing sense of dread. But as they retraced their steps, they found themselves lost, the corridors seeming to twist and change, leading them deeper into the heart of Willowbrook. Panic set in as they realized they couldn't find the way out. Every turn seemed to bring them back to the same room, the same shadow-filled hallway. Nora tried calling for help, her voice echoing in the silence, but no answer came. Instead, the whispers began, soft at first, like the rustling of leaves. The voices were faint, indistinct, filling the air around them, weaving through the darkness. They strained to listen, trying to make sense of the words, but the whispers grew louder, overlapping, merging into a cacophony of sorrow and anger. The symbols on the walls began to glow faintly, illuminating the hallway with an eerie, greenish light. Shadows writhed along the walls, taking shape, twisting into distorted figures, their faces frozen in expressions of agony. Mia stumbled back, her eyes wide with terror as one of the figures reached out, its hand passing through her like a cold breeze, leaving her gasping for breath. Desperate to escape, they ran through the corridors, each hallway leading them deeper into the manor's labyrinthine layout. The voices grew louder, the shadows more insistent, as though the manor itself was alive, hungry, feeding off their fear. Lucas stumbled, falling to his knees, and for a moment, he thought he saw Isaac's face staring back at him from the shadows, his eyes filled with sorrow. "You need to leave," a voice whispered, soft but urgent, "before it takes you." But no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't find the exit. The manor twisted around them, trapping them, its walls closing in like a cage. Alex, exhausted and terrified, collapsed against a wall, his hands clutching his head as the whispers grew unbearable, filling his mind with visions of darkness and despair. Just when they thought all hope was lost, Mia noticed a faint light flickering at the end of a corridor. She led the group toward it, desperate for any sign of escape. The light grew brighter as they approached, revealing a doorway, old and heavy, with strange symbols carved into its wood. Nora hesitated, sensing an intense, dark energy radiating from the door, but Mia pushed it open, revealing a chamber lit by a dim, unnatural glow. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it rested a tattered, ancient book. The moment they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them, and the air grew colder, the shadows pressing in around them. The book seemed to pulse with a dark energy, filling the room with a sense of foreboding. Mia approached it, drawn by an inexplicable pull, as though the book was calling to her. But as she reached out to touch it, a hand grabbed hers, pulling her back. It was Lucas, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. "Don't," he whispered. "This place, it's alive. That book is its heart." Mia hesitated, but the pull was overwhelming, a dark whisper urging her forward. She took a deep breath, steeling herself, and opened the book. Instantly, a wave of darkness poured from its pages, filling the room, swallowing the light. The shadows surged forward, taking shape, their faces twisted with malice, their voices merging into a single horrific scream. The group was trapped, surrounded by the shadows, their whispers filling the air, each voice a fragment of the curse that bound Willowbrook. Mia felt the weight of countless souls pressing down on her, their despair, their anger, their sorrow. She realized, too late, that they had become part of the manor's endless cycle, another layer of horror added to its twisted history. In the darkness, she heard Isaac's voice, faint and distant. "There is no escape. The manor feeds on fear, on suffering, binding each soul to its walls." As the shadows closed in, Mia's last thought was a desperate plea, a hope that someone someday would uncover the truth of Willowbrook Manor and finally bring an end to the curse. But for now, the manor stands silent once more, waiting for its next visitors, for those foolish enough to ignore the warnings, drawn by curiosity and an unquenchable thirst for answers. And within its walls, the whispers continue, a chorus of lost souls, trapped forever in the darkness. Willowbrook Manor has fallen silent once more, its dark secrets swallowed by the shadows. Yet the memory of Mia, Alex, Lucas, and Nora lingers in the walls, the echoes of their final moments merging with the sorrowful whispers of countless others. The manor waits patiently, its hunger for souls never fully sated, its curse lingering like a hidden wound. Years pass, and the forest around Willowbrook grows denser, nature reclaiming the land, hiding the manor from those who might stumble upon it. But even with time and foliage to cover it, Willowbrook calls to those who are lost, curious, or unaware of the danger that awaits within. One rainy evening, a young woman named Evelyn arrives in the nearby town, drawn by rumors of strange occurrences. Evelyn, a dedicated paranormal investigator, has spent years exploring haunted sites, hoping to find undeniable proof of the supernatural. The tales of Willowbrook Manor have become an obsession for her, a place haunted by those who dare to enter, a manor with a soul of its own. Despite warnings from locals and the tales of those who never return, Evelyn decides to seek out the manor. Armed with her equipment, a journal, and an old map, she heads into the woods as the rain begins to fall, the sound of thunder echoing through the trees. The rain grows heavier, a rhythmic patter that blends with the soft whispers she starts to hear, whispers that grow louder as she nears the manor. At last, she reaches the ruins, the structure barely visible in the gloom, hidden among twisted trees and thick vines. She steps onto the cracked, moss-covered path that leads to the entrance, feeling a strange mix of fear and excitement. The manor looms before her, dark and foreboding, but she takes a deep breath, steeling herself, and steps inside. The interior is shrouded in darkness, the air cold and still. Her flashlight flickers as she scans the walls, noticing faint symbols etched into the stone. The symbols seem familiar, fragments of a language she's seen before, but she can't quite place them. She scribbles them in her journal, her heart racing as she moves deeper into the manor. In one room, she finds remnants of the past, faded photographs, dusty furniture, and a broken mirror that reflects only shadows. The rain taps against the broken windows, a steady, haunting rhythm, as Evelyn senses a presence lurking nearby. She feels watched, the hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. But she pushes forward, driven by the allure of discovery. As she explores, she hears footsteps echoing down the halls, soft at first but growing louder, closer. She turns, shining her flashlight down the corridor, but sees only empty darkness. Her hand trembles slightly, but she forces herself to continue, convinced that she is close to finding something significant. Eventually, Evelyn reaches the library, a grand but decayed room filled with shelves of rotting books. In the center stands a pedestal with an old, dusty tome, its pages yellowed with age. As she opens it, the words seem to shift and blur, and she realizes it's written in a language she cannot understand. The whispers around her grow louder, the air growing thick and heavy. Shadows dance along the walls, figures that seem to watch her, their faces frozen in expressions of despair. She reads a few lines from the tome, words she doesn't recognize but that seem to resonate within her, filling her with a deep sense of dread. Suddenly, the room grows colder, and a figure appears in the corner, half hidden in the shadows. Evelyn gasps, stepping back, but the figure doesn't move. Its form is faint, like a ghostly outline, its face a mask of sorrow. She recognizes it from descriptions she'd read in her research. It's Isaac, the manor's former caretaker, a soul trapped within these walls. "Why have you come here?" His voice is barely a whisper, but it fills the room, each word weighted with despair. Evelyn hesitates, struggling to find her voice, before answering, "I'm here for answers, for the truth." Isaac's face twists in sorrow, his form flickering like a candle about to be extinguished. "There is no truth here," he murmurs. "Only pain, only shadows. Leave while you still can." But Evelyn can't turn back now. Driven by a need to understand, she presses Isaac for answers, asking him about the manor's curse, about the souls trapped within its walls. He begins to speak, his voice soft but clear, recounting the tale of Willowbrook, of Eleanor and the rituals that bound them all to this place. As Isaac speaks, the shadows around them grow darker, the whispers rising to a deafening pitch. Evelyn clutches her journal, taking frantic notes, her mind racing as she tries to piece together the fragments of the story. She learns of the ancient amulet, of the heart of Willowbrook, and realizes that the curse may be far older than anyone suspected. Just as Isaac finishes his tale, his form begins to fade, his voice barely audible over the chorus of whispers. "Destroy the heart," he says, his voice a mere echo. "It's the only way to free us all." Before she can respond, he disappears, leaving her alone in the darkness. The whispers grow louder, filled with desperation and anger, as if the manor itself has sensed her intentions. Evelyn feels a cold hand brush against her shoulder, and she stumbles back, her flashlight flickering as shadows close in around her. Determined, she sets off in search of the chamber where the amulet is rumored to be hidden. The manor seems to twist and shift around her, its layout confusing, as though it's trying to mislead her. Hallways she thought were familiar lead her in circles, Rooms she entered before now looked foreign, each corner hiding a new terror. At last, she finds herself in a dimly lit chamber, the air thick with the stench of decay. In the center of the room stands the pedestal, and on it rests the amulet, pulsing with a dark, unnatural light. Evelyn approaches it slowly, her heart pounding, her hand reaching out to touch it. The moment her fingers brush against the amulet, she is flooded with memories. Visions of the manor's past, of Eleanor's rituals, of the countless souls bound to Willowbrook. She feels their pain, their fear, their despair, and she realizes the weight of what she holds. But before she can destroy the amulet, the shadows in the room coalesce, forming the shape of Eleanor herself. Her face is pale, her eyes empty, her voice a hollow echo as she speaks. "You think you can end this?" Eleanor's voice is cold, mocking. "This place is mine. These souls are mine. And now, so are you." Evelyn stares at Eleanor, her grip on the amulet tightening. She feels the darkness pressing in on her, the weight of the souls trapped within the manor, all crying out for release. Summoning every ounce of courage, she raises the amulet above her head, determined to break it, to free the souls bound to Willowbrook. But Eleanor's form solidifies, her shadowy hands reaching out to stop her. Evelyn struggles, feeling the cold grip of Eleanor's fingers wrapping around her, pulling her into the darkness. The room spins, the shadows merging, the whispers rising to a crescendo as she fights to keep hold of the amulet. With a final surge of strength, she brings the amulet down, shattering it against the stone floor. A blinding light fills the room, and she hears the anguished screams of Eleanor, of the souls bound to the manor, as they are released from their prison. The light fades, and Evelyn finds herself alone, the chamber silent, the air still. The manor's oppressive presence has lifted, the shadows gone, the whispers silenced. She feels a profound sense of peace, a weight lifted from her shoulders as she realizes that the curse has finally been broken. As she makes her way out of the manor, the rain has stopped, and the first light of dawn breaks over the horizon. The ruins of Willowbrook stand silent, a place of horror now laid to rest. Evelyn leaves, her heart heavy with the knowledge of the souls she has freed, and with a vow to ensure that Willowbrook's story is finally told, its secrets brought to light. In the years that follow, Willowbrook is forgotten, reclaimed by the forest, its dark history fading into legend. And on quiet nights, when the rain falls softly, those who wander near might still hear faint whispers on the wind, the final echoes of the souls who were once bound within its walls, their voices a testament to a past now at peace. Decades after the events at Willowbrook Manor, the forest reclaimed the land, shrouding the ruins in a dense, almost impenetrable blanket of greenery. To all who lived nearby, the stories of Willowbrook had all but faded into obscurity, relegated to local folklore. Yet, there was one person who couldn't let go of the manor's legacy, a man named Adrian, an archivist who had come across Evelyn's journal while sorting through a box of forgotten documents. Evelyn's journal was filled with her frantic notes and descriptions of her experiences within Willowbrook Manor. Adrian was captivated by her account of the curse, the amulet, and the souls that had haunted the walls. And though Evelyn's last entry seemed to conclude her story, Adrian felt that there was more, that some secrets remained hidden within the manor's ruins. Adrian couldn't ignore the pull, the haunting curiosity that grew with each page he read. He began to research Willowbrook, digging through historical records, scouring maps, piecing together the fragmented past of the manor and its inhabitants. The deeper he delved, the more obsessed he became, until, finally, he felt compelled to see Willowbrook for himself. On a cold, mist-laden morning, Adrian set off into the forest, clutching Evelyn's journal as a guide. Rain began to fall, lightly at first, then harder, each drop echoing like the whisper of a ghost as he followed the overgrown path to the manor. The ruins appeared before him, almost hidden by trees and vines, standing in eerie silence. Adrian felt a strange energy in the air, as though the manor itself was alive, watching, waiting. He entered the manor, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. With each step, his flashlight illuminated fragments of the past. Cracked walls, broken furniture, and faded symbols etched into the stone. He felt a chill run down his spine as he passed through the hallways, the oppressive silence pressing in on him. The whispers began, faint at first, barely discernible from the sound of the rain, but growing louder as he moved deeper into the ruins. Adrian approached the altar, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He felt the weight of countless eyes watching him, their presence pressing down on him, filling him with a sense of dread. The shadows seemed to close in around him, their forms becoming clearer, revealing faces twisted with sorrow, with anger, with fear. He realized, with a shiver, that these were the souls trapped within Willowbrook, the very ones Evelyn had tried to free. One shadow stepped forward, its face familiar, its voice soft. It was Isaac, the former caretaker, his ghostly form etched with sorrow. "You shouldn't have come here," Isaac whispered, his voice filled with an ancient sadness. "The curse, it's still here, bound to this place, to those who venture too deep." Adrian tried to speak, to ask questions, but his voice caught in his throat as Isaac's words echoed in his mind. The shadows around him moved closer, each face filled with despair, each figure bearing the weight of the curse that had bound them to Willowbrook. He felt their pain, their fear, their unending torment, and he understood that they were trapped, unable to move on, unable to find peace. Isaac reached out, his ghostly hand brushing against Adrian's arm, sending a chill through him. "Leave," Isaac murmured, his voice barely audible. "Before the manor claims you too." But before Adrian could move, he felt a strange pull, a dark energy seeping into him, filling him with a sense of dread and sorrow. The shadows pressed in, their whispers growing louder, merging into a chorus of despair that filled the room, drowning out his thoughts. He stumbled back, clutching Evelyn's journal, feeling its pages warm, almost burning in his hand. Desperate, he opened it, flipping through the pages, seeking some answer, some way to break free. And there, scrawled in Evelyn's hurried handwriting, was a single line. "The curse binds to those who seek its secrets. To break it, one must sacrifice." Adrian's heart raced as he read the words, realizing the terrible truth. The curse of Willowbrook was not broken. It had merely lain dormant, waiting for someone to awaken it. And now it had found him, drawing him deeper into its web, binding him to the manor's dark heart. As he stood there, the shadows surged forward, their whispers rising to a deafening pitch, filling his mind with visions of the past, the rituals, the suffering, the lives lost. He saw Eleanor, her face twisted with malice as she performed the ritual that had bound so many souls to Willowbrook. He saw her laughing, reveling in the power she had wielded, her eyes filled with a cold, unyielding darkness. And then he felt it, a warmth spreading through his chest, a light pushing back against the darkness. It was Evelyn, her spirit guiding him, her voice soft but clear. "You have the power to end this," she whispered, "but it will come at a cost." Adrian understood. To break the curse, he would have to give himself to it, to become part of the darkness, to sacrifice his soul for the freedom of the others. He looked at the shadows around him, at Isaac, at the countless souls trapped within Willowbrook, and he felt a surge of resolve. With a final, determined breath, he stepped toward the altar, placing his hand on its cold, stone surface. He spoke the words he'd read in Evelyn's journal, an incantation meant to bind and release, his voice steady, unwavering. The room filled with light, a brilliant, blinding glow that pushed back the darkness, that shattered the shadows. The souls cried out, their voices merging into a chorus of relief, of gratitude, as they felt the curse lifting, their bonds breaking, their spirits finally free. Adrian felt his strength fading, his vision dimming, but he knew he had succeeded. As the light faded, the shadows disappeared, leaving only silence, a profound, peaceful silence that filled the manor. And then there was nothing. Willowbrook Manor stands empty now, its walls silent, its halls empty, its curse finally broken. The forest has reclaimed the land, vines and trees covering the ruins, erasing all traces of the horrors that once resided within. But on quiet nights, when the rain falls softly, some say they can still feel a presence near the ruins, a warmth that lingers in the air, a silent guardian watching over the place where so many souls were once trapped. For Adrian, his story is over, but his sacrifice lives on, a reminder that some curses can only be broken by those brave enough to face the darkness, to bring light to the shadows, and to set the souls within free. After Adrian's sacrifice and the seeming end of Willowbrook's curse, the story of the manor gradually faded into myth, spoken of only in whispers by those in the nearby village. Generations came and went, and Willowbrook's once feared reputation softened, becoming the kind of story told around campfires, its dark legacy almost forgotten. But the manor was never fully abandoned. The land had a way of calling back those who had heard its stories, and for some, that call was stronger than reason, stronger even than fear. Years passed, and a young woman named Lillian moved into the nearby town. She was a historian and a writer, fascinated by local legends. One day, she stumbled across a fragment of Evelyn's journal in a library archive, a single, torn page detailing Evelyn's fear, her hope, and her final warnings about Willowbrook. The passage was incomplete, but it was enough to pique Lillian's curiosity. She had to know more. The words seemed to call to her, leaving a lingering sense of mystery and urgency she couldn't ignore. Lillian spent weeks digging through archives, visiting the village, and interviewing anyone who remembered the story of Willowbrook. She encountered some who refused to speak, their eyes clouded with fear, while others dismissed the tales as nothing more than overblown folklore. However, a local elder, Ms. Harper, shared the story of Adrian's disappearance with Lillian, her voice trembling as she recounted the tale of his fateful journey into the manor. Ms. Harper handed Lillian a worn, leather-bound journal. "He left this behind," she murmured, her eyes distant. "It's all I have left of my brother." Shocked, Lillian realized that Adrian had been the elder's brother. Though she'd known of Adrian's story, she hadn't realized the connection. The elder whispered, "He's still in there, you know. They never found him, or his spirit." The journal contained notes, sketches, and a final entry written in Adrian's hand, a scrawled warning about the curse, the souls, and a binding ritual. Lillian was enthralled, her curiosity transforming into obsession. She couldn't shake the feeling that the story wasn't over, that Adrian's spirit, and the many others, were still tethered to Willowbrook, trapped by the last remnants of the curse. Against all advice, she decided to visit the manor herself, determined to piece together the final puzzle. One foggy autumn morning, Lillian trekked through the dense forest, her footsteps muffled by the damp earth. The manor stood shrouded in mist, its crumbling facade hidden beneath ivy and moss. The silence was thick, broken only by the soft patter of rain on the leaves. She stepped inside, clutching Adrian's journal in her hands, a lantern casting a faint, warm glow against the shadows. As she explored, Lillian felt an intense chill, as though the manor itself were breathing, its walls alive with the memories of those who had perished within. She could feel a presence, an energy that lingered, pulsating with a faint, eerie warmth. It was as if the spirits were watching, waiting. She called out softly, her voice echoing down the empty halls, asking if anyone was there. The air grew still, and for a moment, silence filled the space. Then she heard it, a soft, mournful whisper that echoed through the corridor, chilling her to the bone. It was a voice, distant yet familiar, calling her name. Lillian. She froze, heart pounding, recognizing Adrian's voice. Her hand trembled as she opened the journal, her eyes scanning the faded words. The final entry seemed to glow faintly, a single line standing out. To free them, you must offer yourself. Lillian closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of calm. She understood now. Adrian's warning hadn't been just for the curse. It had been a plea, a way for someone to finally bring peace to the manor. She had a choice. She could leave and let the souls remain bound, or she could stay and release them, freeing the spirits from their eternal suffering. Determined, Lillian moved toward the heart of the manor, the basement where the altar had once stood. She descended the steps, each one resonating with the echoes of the past, the weight of the manor's history pressing down on her. The basement was dark and cold, an oppressive silence filling the space. She placed the journal on the altar, opening it to Adrian's final entry, and began to recite the words written within. As she spoke, the room seemed to shift, the air growing heavy, thick with an unseen presence. Shadows emerged from the walls, forming into figures: Isaac, Evelyn, Adrian, and countless others who had perished within Willowbrook. They surrounded her, their faces filled with sorrow, with hope. Their voices rose in a soft, haunting chorus, filling the air with a strange melody, a song of release. Lillian felt a warmth within her chest, a light spreading through her, connecting her to the spirits, to the manor, to the very land itself. She knew this was the sacrifice Adrian had written of, the binding of her spirit to the manor, a way to break the curse once and for all. She could feel her own life fading, her essence. But just as her last breath escaped her, she felt a surge of energy, a release, a final burst of light that shattered the darkness, freeing the souls trapped within. The spirits dissipated, their forms fading, their voices quieting until only silence remained. And as the last soul departed, a gentle warmth filled the manor, a sense of peace that had never existed before. Willowbrook Manor stands empty to this day, its walls silent, its halls bathed in an eternal calm. The forest has reclaimed the land, vines covering the stones, flowers blooming where once only shadows had dwelled. And though the manor's dark history has faded, the memory of Lillian and Adrian lingers, a reminder of the sacrifices made, the lives given to bring peace to the haunted ground. On quiet nights, when the rain falls softly, some say they can still feel a presence near the ruins, a gentle warmth, a light that guides those who wander too close. The spirits of Willowbrook have found peace, but their story lives on, a legacy of bravery, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond between the living and the dead. Years after Lillian's sacrifice and the final release of Willowbrook's spirits, the manor and the forest around it remained quiet, undisturbed by humans. Nature began to reclaim the land entirely, enveloping the ruins in greenery. Only the faintest remnants of the manor's structure were visible, hidden beneath vines and moss. Locals had stopped visiting entirely, leaving the forest paths overgrown, tangled with wildflowers, as though nature itself was trying to hide Willowbrook away. One autumn evening, a small team of university researchers arrived in the nearby village. The group, specializing in folklore and ancient rituals, had heard faint echoes of the Willowbrook story through obscure historical references. The lead researcher, Dr. Evelyn Connors, no relation to the original Evelyn, was particularly drawn to the idea of studying the residual energy of the land where the infamous manor had once stood. Skeptical but intrigued, she saw it as an opportunity to explore the psychological effects of haunted locations, believing that any supernatural claims could be explained through science. She convinced her team to join her, assuring them that it was simply another site to document. They gathered their equipment, audio recorders, cameras, and sensitive devices designed to measure electromagnetic fields, thermal variations, and more. Arriving just before dusk, they followed an ancient, nearly hidden path toward the remnants of Willowbrook. The air was thick with the scent of damp leaves and earth, the sun casting long shadows across the forest floor. As they reached the overgrown ruins, the temperature seemed to drop, a chill settling over the area that none of them could explain. Dr. Connors brushed it off, attributing it to the setting and the season. But her assistant, Paul, felt an odd sensation in his chest, a subtle, almost electric pulse, as though something in the air were alive, waiting. They began their investigation methodically, setting up equipment and documenting the ruins' remaining features. The forest was silent, eerily so, as they moved among the fallen stones and tangled vines. Evelyn felt a strange familiarity with the place, as if she had been here before, though she knew it was impossible. She shrugged off the feeling, attributing it to the powerful stories she had read about the manor's haunted past. As night fell, their equipment began to pick up odd readings. Paul's thermal camera captured cold spots in various places around the ruins, and the EMF reader occasionally spiked, though there were no power sources nearby. One of the researchers, Karen, noticed a faint, flickering light just beyond the tree line, as though someone were holding a lantern in the distance. She pointed it out to the others, but as soon as they turned to look, the light vanished. They brushed it off as a trick of the eyes, a mere reflection of the moonlight through the trees. But Evelyn was intrigued, her curiosity stronger than her fear. She suggested they follow the direction where the light had appeared, hoping it might lead to some overlooked part of the ruins, or perhaps a hidden structure buried deeper in the woods. They ventured further into the forest, their flashlights casting beams of light that barely seemed to penetrate the darkness. The path became more difficult to navigate, the air growing colder, filled with an inexplicable tension. As they moved, they began to hear faint whispers, just barely audible, like voices carried on the wind. The words were unintelligible, yet filled with a sorrowful urgency that made the hair on the back of Evelyn's neck stand up. Paul hesitated, wanting to turn back, but Evelyn pressed forward, her determination unwavering. She was convinced that they were on the brink of discovering something profound, something that would validate years of her work. But as they ventured deeper, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, as though they were intruding on something sacred. Then, they reached a clearing where the ground was bare, untouched by the greenery that covered the rest of the forest floor. In the center stood a stone altar, partially covered by moss but unmistakably deliberate in its design. The sight of it filled them with an inexplicable dread, a heaviness that pressed down on their chests. Evelyn approached the altar, her flashlight revealing faint symbols etched into the stone, symbols she recognized from her studies of ancient rituals. She reached out to brush away the moss, and as she did, a cold wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing their flashlights and plunging them into darkness. For a moment, all was silent. Then, from the shadows, a soft voice echoed, filled with sorrow and resignation. "Why have you come?" The voice was distant yet familiar, and Evelyn realized, with a shiver, that it was Adrian's voice, the very figure whose journal she had studied for months. She tried to speak, to explain, but her voice caught in her throat. Paul and Karen stood frozen, their eyes wide with terror as shadows began to coalesce around them, forming indistinct figures with faces twisted in pain and longing. Adrian's voice spoke again, louder this time, his tone filled with both warning and despair. "You shouldn't have come here. The curse, it never truly ended." The shadows closed in, their whispers merging into a chilling symphony of voices, each one telling of the suffering they had endured, of the lives lost within Willowbrook. Evelyn felt a surge of guilt and fear, realizing that her curiosity had led her into something far darker than she had anticipated. Desperate to escape, Paul tried to turn back, but the path they had taken was gone, replaced by an impenetrable wall of trees and shadows. They were trapped, ensnared by the very curse they had come to document. The air grew colder still, and Evelyn felt a presence behind her, a figure watching, waiting. Turning slowly, she saw the faint outline of a woman standing at the edge of the clearing, her eyes filled with sorrow and wisdom beyond the grave. It was Evelyn Connors, the original Evelyn, whose spirit lingered, bound to the land by the same curse that had ensnared countless others. The ghostly figure spoke softly, her voice filled with resignation. "To end this, someone must stay. The curse demands a soul to hold the burden, to guard the boundary between life and death." Realizing the weight of Evelyn's words, Dr. Connors felt a surge of understanding. This was why Adrian had stayed, why Lillian had sacrificed herself. They had given their lives to keep the curse contained, to prevent it from spreading beyond the manor. And now, the curse had found a new vessel, someone who had trespassed too far, who had dared to disturb the resting place of those who could never move on. With a heavy heart, Evelyn stepped forward, accepting her fate. She knew that if she did not stay, the curse would continue to reach out, drawing in new souls, trapping more innocent lives. She whispered a final apology to her team, her voice choked with sorrow. As she placed her hand on the stone altar, a warmth spread through her, a light pushing back against the darkness. The shadows receded, their anguished faces softening, their voices fading into silence. The air grew still, and the forest was at peace once more. Paul and Karen felt the weight lift, the oppressive energy dissipating, leaving only the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind. They turned to see Evelyn's figure fading, her spirit merging with the land, becoming part of the eternal guardianship over Willowbrook. With tears in their eyes, they fled the forest, leaving the ruins behind, the memory of Evelyn's sacrifice etched into their hearts. And though the manor remains hidden, untouched by human hands, those who know the story remember Evelyn, Adrian, and Lillian, the souls who gave everything to keep the darkness at bay. On nights when the rain falls softly, the forest near Willowbrook remains silent, a place of reverence and peace, guarded by those who came before, their spirits forever bound to the land they protected. The curse is contained, the manor at rest, but the memory of those who sacrificed endures, a testament to the courage it takes to face the darkness and to find peace in its depths. Years after Dr. Evelyn Connor's self-sacrifice, stories of Willowbrook Manor had faded almost entirely. The locals no longer spoke of the place, and only the faintest hints of rumor or legend remained. Yet, deep within the forest, nature had not fully reclaimed the land. Willowbrook remained an eternal, unyielding presence, as though the very earth had absorbed the energies of those who had perished and sacrificed on its grounds. "I'll do it," he whispered, his voice steady. "I'll stay." Evelyn nodded, and the spirits around him began to fade, their forms dissolving into the night. As they disappeared, he felt a surge of energy within him, as though the manor were absorbing him, binding his spirit to its walls, its stones, its soil. The cold dissipated, replaced by a warmth that filled him from within as the first light of dawn crept through the trees. Willowbrook Manor fell silent, its curse held in check by a new guardian. The forest resumed its quiet, eternal watch over the manor, and no one who ventured near felt its pull again. To this day, the ruins of Willowbrook remain undisturbed, a place of quiet, haunting beauty hidden deep within the forest. The locals tell no stories of ghosts or curses anymore, and no one is drawn to the land. Yet on certain winter nights, when the air grows still and the moon casts a pale glow over the ruins, those who pass by might feel a presence, a quiet, peaceful figure standing watch, ensuring the curse remains bound forever. Years after Thomas Green sacrificed himself to bind the curse of Willowbrook, the forest grew quieter, the air thicker, as if the land itself were weary from centuries of darkness. The manor, now a mere outline of ruins beneath a blanket of moss and vines, lay in stillness, seemingly untouched by human presence. The villagers rarely spoke of it, but rumors persisted. An occasional flicker of light from deep within the woods, or the sound of a distant, sorrowful melody drifting on the wind during long, cold nights. One brisk autumn evening, a young woman named Emily arrived in the nearby village. Unlike those who came before her, she hadn't stumbled upon the story of Willowbrook in an old archive or journal. Instead, she had been drawn here by dreams, vivid, haunting visions of a place she had never seen but felt inexplicably connected to. For months, she had dreamed of shadowed trees, of a sorrowful melody and voices whispering her name. Convinced that the answers lay within the depths of Willowbrook, she packed her belongings and traveled across the country to find it, ignoring the warning signs along the way. Emily checked into a small inn near the forest and asked the locals about the manor. Most of them avoided her questions, unwilling to speak of the place that had brought so much tragedy. But one elderly man, seemingly undeterred by her questions, quietly pulled her aside and whispered, "There's a reason people stay away from Willowbrook. It's best left in peace, child." Despite the old man's warning, Emily felt an unshakable pull toward the forest. She knew that whatever haunted her dreams, whatever had taken root in her mind, would only leave her if she confronted it. The following morning, armed with nothing but a flashlight and a small notebook, she ventured into the forest. The path was narrow and overgrown, winding deeper into the heart of the woods. A thick fog clung to the ground, swirling around her ankles as she walked. The trees, tall and ancient, seemed to watch her, their branches bending and creaking as if they carried the weight of memories long forgotten. Emily felt an odd sense of familiarity with the forest, as if she had walked this path before. The deeper she went, the heavier the air grew, and soon, the distant sound of that sorrowful melody reached her ears, a faint, haunting tune that sent a shiver down her spine. She followed the sound, her steps quickening as the melody grew louder, more distinct. Eventually, she arrived at the edge of a clearing, where the remains of Willowbrook Manor lay hidden beneath layers of moss and ivy. The manor was barely recognizable, its structure all but collapsed, yet Emily could feel its presence, a dark, palpable energy that seemed to pulse from the very ground. She stepped into the clearing, and as she did, the air grew colder. Shadows shifted at the edge of her vision, and the melody ceased, leaving only an eerie silence in its wake. Emily took a deep breath and approached the remnants of the manor, her heart pounding as she scanned the ruins, searching for, she wasn't sure what, answers, perhaps. Or maybe, she thought, the voices that had been calling her name in her dreams. As she explored, she felt a strange sensation, a pull, as if something were drawing her toward a particular spot within the ruins. She followed the feeling, her steps almost guided, until she reached a stone covered in moss and leaves. Kneeling down, she brushed away the debris, revealing a faint engraving, the initials AF, the marks of Evelyn Connors and Adrian Finch. Her heart skipped a beat. She remembered fragments from her dreams, a man and a woman, figures who seemed familiar yet distant, connected to her somehow. She whispered their names, and as she did, the air grew thick with a chill that seeped into her bones. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the shadows, a faint, ghostly silhouette with sad, weary eyes. It was Evelyn Connors. Her expression was both sorrowful and resigned, as if she had been waiting for Emily all along. She opened her mouth to speak, but her voice was a mere whisper, barely audible. "You shouldn't have come," Evelyn said, her voice tinged with both warning and sadness. "The curse, it still lingers. We've bound it, but it can never be fully erased." Emily took a shaky breath, struggling to find her voice. Why am I here? Why have I been dreaming of this place?" Evelyn's face softened, and a hint of recognition passed over her features. "You carry our blood," she murmured. "The curse is bound to our family, passed down through generations. Every so often, one of us is drawn back, compelled to carry the burden." Emily felt a chill run through her. She had never known much about her family's history, but her dreams, her connection to Willowbrook, it all suddenly made sense. She was tied to this place, bound by the same curse that had claimed Evelyn and Adrian, Thomas, and countless others. "But there must be a way to end it," Emily whispered, desperation creeping into her voice. "There has to be something I can do." Evelyn's gaze grew distant, as if she were searching through memories long buried. "There is only one way," she said slowly, "but it comes at a great cost. Someone must willingly tether themselves to the land, to act as its eternal guardian. It's the only way to keep the curse contained." Emily's heart sank, the weight of Evelyn's words settling over her like a shroud. She realized, with a chilling certainty, that the same fate awaited her. She could leave and let the curse continue its cycle, or she could stay, sacrificing herself to keep it from spreading. But before she could respond, a new presence emerged from the shadows, a tall figure with a solemn expression, his eyes filled with resignation. It was Thomas Green, his spirit forever bound to Willowbrook as the manor's latest guardian. "Evelyn," he said softly, his gaze shifting to Emily, "it's not her time. We've contained the curse, for now." Evelyn turned to Thomas, her expression conflicted. "The curse is never truly contained, Thomas. It lingers, reaching out to those who are bound by blood. She will return, as we all have." Thomas sighed, nodding in understanding. "But we can give her time, a chance to live, to choose freely when the moment comes." Emily listened, her heart pounding as she realized the gravity of her connection to Willowbrook. She looked at Thomas, her voice steady yet filled with sorrow. "If I leave, will the curse come for me?" As the first light of dawn crept through the trees, Willowbrook Manor fell silent, its curse held in check by a new guardian. The forest resumed its quiet, eternal watch over the manor, and no one who ventured near felt its pull again. To this day, the ruins of Willowbrook remain undisturbed, a place of quiet, haunting beauty hidden deep within the forest. The locals tell no stories of ghosts or curses anymore, and no one is drawn to the land. Yet on certain winter nights, when the air grows still and the moon casts a pale glow over the ruins, those who pass by might feel a presence, a quiet, peaceful figure standing watch, ensuring the curse remains bound forever. Years after Thomas Green sacrificed himself to bind the curse of Willowbrook, the forest grew quieter, the air thicker, as if the land itself were weary from centuries of darkness. The manor, now a mere outline of ruins beneath a blanket of moss and vines, lay in stillness, seemingly untouched by human presence. The villagers rarely spoke of it, but rumors persisted. An occasional flicker of light from deep within the woods, or the sound of a distant, sorrowful melody drifting on the wind during long, cold nights. One brisk autumn evening, a young woman named Emily arrived in the nearby village. Unlike those who came before her, she hadn't stumbled upon the story of Willowbrook in an old archive or journal. Instead, she had been drawn here by dreams, vivid, haunting visions of a place she had never seen but felt inexplicably connected to. For months, she had dreamed of shadowed trees, of a sorrowful melody and voices whispering her name. Convinced that the answers lay within the depths of Willowbrook, she packed her belongings and traveled across the country to find it, ignoring the warning signs along the way. Emily checked into a small inn near the forest and asked the locals about the manor. Most of them avoided her questions, unwilling to speak of the place that had brought so much tragedy. But one elderly man, seemingly undeterred by her questions, quietly pulled her aside and whispered, "There's a reason people stay away from Willowbrook. It's best left in peace, child." Despite the old man's warning, Emily felt an unshakable pull toward the forest. She knew that whatever haunted her dreams, whatever had taken root in her mind, would only leave her if she confronted it. The following morning, armed with nothing but a flashlight and a small notebook, she ventured into the forest. The path was narrow and overgrown, winding deeper into the heart of the woods. A thick fog clung to the ground, swirling around her ankles as she walked. The trees, tall and ancient, seemed to watch her, their branches bending and creaking as if they carried the weight of memories long forgotten. Emily felt an odd sense of familiarity with the forest, as if she had walked this path before. The deeper she went, the heavier the air grew, and soon the distant sound of that sorrowful melody reached her ears, a faint, haunting tune that sent a shiver down her spine. She followed the sound, her steps quickening as the melody grew louder, more distinct. Eventually, she arrived at the edge of a clearing, where the remains of Willowbrook Manor lay hidden beneath layers of moss and ivy. The manor was barely recognizable, its structure all but collapsed, yet Emily could feel its presence, a dark, palpable energy that seemed to pulse from the very ground. She stepped into the clearing, and as she did, the air grew colder. Shadows shifted at the edge of her vision, and the melody ceased, leaving only an eerie silence in its wake. Emily took a deep breath and approached the remnants of the manor, her heart pounding as she scanned the ruins, searching for, she wasn't sure what, answers, perhaps. Or maybe, she thought, the voices that had been calling her name in her dreams. As she explored, she felt a strange sensation, a pull, as if something were drawing her toward a particular spot within the ruins. She followed the feeling, her steps almost guided, until she reached a stone covered in moss and leaves. Kneeling down, she brushed away the debris, revealing a faint engraving, the initials AF, the marks of Evelyn Connors and Adrian Finch. Her heart skipped a beat. She remembered fragments from her dreams, a man and a woman, figures who seemed familiar yet distant, connected to her somehow. She whispered their names, and as she did, The air grew thick with a chill that seeped into her bones. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the shadows, a faint, ghostly silhouette with sad, weary eyes. It was Evelyn Connors. Her expression was both sorrowful and resigned, as if she had been waiting for Emily all along. She opened her mouth to speak, but her voice was a mere whisper, barely audible. "You shouldn't have come," Evelyn said, her voice tinged with both warning and sadness. "The curse, it still lingers. We've bound it, but it can never be fully erased." Emily took a shaky breath, struggling to find her voice. Why am I here? Why have I been dreaming of this place?" Evelyn's face softened, and a hint of recognition passed over her features. "You carry our blood," she murmured. "The curse is bound to our family, passed down through generations. Every so often, one of us is drawn back, compelled to carry the burden." Emily felt a chill run through her. She had never known much about her family's history, but her dreams, her connection to Willowbrook, it all suddenly made sense. She was tied to this place, bound by the same curse that had claimed Evelyn and Adrian, Thomas, and countless others. "But there must be a way to end it," Emily whispered, desperation creeping into her voice. "There has to be something I can do." Evelyn's gaze grew distant, as if she were searching through memories long buried. "There is only one way," she said slowly, "but it comes at a great cost. Someone must willingly tether themselves to the land, to act as its eternal guardian. It's the only way to keep the curse contained." Emily's heart sank, the weight of Evelyn's words settling over her like a shroud. She realized, with a chilling certainty, that the same fate awaited her. She could leave and let the curse continue its cycle, or she could stay, sacrificing herself to keep it from spreading. But before she could respond, a new presence emerged from the shadows, a tall figure with a solemn expression, his eyes filled with resignation. It was Thomas Green, his spirit forever bound to Willowbrook as the manor's latest guardian. "Evelyn," he said softly, his gaze shifting to Emily, "it's not her time. We've contained the curse, for now." Evelyn turned to Thomas, her expression conflicted. "The curse is never truly contained, Thomas. It lingers, reaching out to those who are bound by blood. She will return, as we all have." Thomas sighed, nodding in understanding. "But we can give her time, a chance to live, to choose freely when the moment comes." Emily listened, her heart pounding as she realized the gravity of her connection to Willowbrook. She looked at Thomas, her voice steady yet filled with sorrow. "If I leave, will the curse come for me?" As the first light of dawn crept through the trees, Willowbrook Manor fell silent, its curse held in check by a new guardian. The forest resumed its quiet, eternal watch over the manor, and no one who ventured near felt its pull again. To this day, the ruins of Willowbrook remain undisturbed, a place of quiet, haunting beauty hidden deep within the forest. The locals tell no stories of ghosts or curses anymore, and no one is drawn to the land. Yet on certain winter nights, when the air grows still and the moon casts a pale glow over the ruins, those who pass by might feel a presence, a quiet, peaceful figure standing watch, ensuring the curse remains bound forever. Years after Thomas Green sacrificed himself to bind the curse of Willowbrook, the forest grew quieter, the air thicker, as if the land itself were weary from centuries of darkness. The manor, now a mere outline of ruins beneath a blanket of moss and vines, lay in stillness, seemingly untouched by human presence. The villagers rarely spoke of it, but rumors persisted. An occasional flicker of light from deep within the woods, or the sound of a distant, sorrowful melody drifting on the wind during long, cold nights. One brisk autumn evening, a young woman named Emily arrived in the nearby village. Unlike those who came before her, she hadn't stumbled upon the story of Willowbrook in an old archive or journal. Instead, she had been drawn here by dreams. Vivid, haunting visions of a place she had never seen but felt inexplicably connected to. For months, she had dreamed of shadowed trees, of a sorrowful melody and voices whispering her name. Convinced that the answers lay within the depths of Willowbrook, she packed her belongings and traveled across the country to find it, ignoring the warning signs along the way. Emily checked into a small inn near the forest and asked the locals about the manor. Most of them avoided her questions, unwilling to speak of the place that had brought so much tragedy. But one elderly man, seemingly undeterred by her questions, quietly pulled her aside and whispered, "There's a reason people stay away from Willowbrook. It's best left in peace, child." Despite the old man's warning, Emily felt an unshakable pull toward the forest. She knew that whatever haunted her dreams, whatever had taken root in her mind, would only leave her if she confronted it. The following morning, armed with nothing but a flashlight and a small notebook, she ventured into the forest. The path was narrow and overgrown, winding deeper into the heart of the woods. A thick fog clung to the ground, swirling around her ankles as she walked. The trees, tall and ancient, seemed to watch her, their branches bending and creaking as if they carried the weight of memories long forgotten. Emily felt an odd sense of familiarity with the forest, as if she had walked this path before. The deeper she went, the heavier the air grew, and soon, the distant sound of that sorrowful melody reached her ears, a faint, haunting tune that sent a shiver down her spine. She followed the sound, her steps quickening as the melody grew louder, more distinct. Eventually, she arrived at the edge of a clearing, where the remains of Willowbrook Manor lay hidden beneath layers of moss and ivy. The manor was barely recognizable, its structure all but collapsed, yet Emily could feel its presence, a dark, palpable energy that seemed to pulse from the very ground. She stepped into the clearing, and as she did, the air grew colder. Shadows shifted at the edge of her vision, and the melody ceased, leaving only an eerie silence in its wake. Emily took a deep breath and approached the remnants of the manor, her heart pounding as she scanned the ruins, searching for, she wasn't sure what. Answers, perhaps. Or maybe, she thought, the voices that had been calling her name in her dreams. As she explored, she felt a strange sensation, a pull, as if something were drawing her toward a particular spot within the ruins. She followed the feeling, her steps almost guided, until she reached a stone covered in moss and leaves. Kneeling down, she brushed away the debris, revealing a faint engraving, the initials AF, the marks of Evelyn Connors and Adrian Finch. Her heart skipped a beat. She remembered fragments from her dreams, a man and a woman, figures who seemed familiar yet distant, connected to her somehow. She whispered their names, and as she did, the air grew thick with a chill that seeped into her bones. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the shadows, a faint, ghostly silhouette with sad, weary eyes. It was Evelyn Connors. Her expression was both sorrowful and resigned, as if she had been waiting for Emily all along. She opened her mouth to speak, but her voice was a mere whisper, barely audible. "You shouldn't have come," Evelyn said, her voice tinged with both warning and sadness. "The curse, it still lingers. We've bound it, but it can never be fully erased." Emily took a shaky breath, struggling to find her voice. Why am I here? Why have I been dreaming of this place? Evelyn's face softened, and a hint of recognition passed over her features. "You carry our blood," she murmured. "The curse is bound to our family, passed down through generations. Every so often, one of us is drawn back, compelled to carry the burden." Emily felt a chill run through her. She had never known much about her family's history, but her dreams, her connection to Willowbrook, it all suddenly made sense. She was tied to this place, bound by the same curse that had claimed Evelyn and Adrian, Thomas, and countless others. "But there must be a way to end it," Emily whispered, desperation creeping into her voice. "There has to be something I can do." Evelyn's gaze grew distant, as if she were searching through memories long buried. "There is only one way," she said slowly, "but it comes at a great cost. Someone must willingly tether themselves to the land, to act as its eternal guardian. It's the only way to keep the curse contained." Emily's heart sank, the weight of Evelyn's words settling over her like a shroud. She realized, with a chilling certainty, that the same fate awaited her. She could leave and let the curse continue its cycle, or she could stay, sacrificing herself to keep it from spreading. But before she could respond, a new presence emerged from the shadows, a tall figure with a solemn expression, his eyes filled with resignation. It was Thomas Green, his spirit forever bound to Willowbrook as the manor's latest guardian. "Evelyn," he said softly, his gaze shifting to Emily, "it's not her time. We've contained the curse, for now." Evelyn turned to Thomas, her expression conflicted. "The curse is never truly contained, Thomas. It lingers, reaching out to those who are bound by blood. She will return, as we all have." Thomas sighed, nodding in understanding. "But we can give her time, a chance to live, to choose freely when the moment comes." Emily listened, her heart pounding as she realized the gravity of her connection to Willowbrook. She looked at Thomas, her voice steady yet filled with sorrow. "If I leave, will the curse come for me?" Thomas's expression softened. "You'll feel its pull, but it won't claim you, not unless you return. If you choose to live, you may find peace, but you will carry the memories of this place. And someday, you may feel the need to return." Emily felt the weight of his words, understanding that Willowbrook would forever be a part of her, an unbreakable bond she could neither escape nor ignore. But for now, she had a choice. She could leave, return to her life, and carry the memories with her, a reminder of the darkness her ancestors had faced. Evelyn stepped forward, her hand reaching out as if to touch Emily's shoulder. "If you choose to go, carry our story with you. Tell no one, but remember us. Remember Willowbrook and the lives that were lost here." Emily nodded, tears filling her eyes as she took one last look at Evelyn, Thomas, and the manor that held so many secrets. She turned and began to walk away, the weight of her decision pressing down on her, each step both liberating and heartbreaking. As she left the clearing, the forest seemed to release her, the oppressive air lifting. She didn't look back, knowing that Willowbrook would remain in her memory, a silent guardian in the depths of her mind, waiting for the day when she might choose to return. And on certain nights, when the air is still and the moon hangs high, Emily feels the faintest tug in her heart, a pull from a place deep within the woods, calling her back to the secrets she left behind. Years had passed since Emily left Willowbrook behind, but the manor's presence lingered in her life like a shadow that would never quite fade. She moved to a city far away, hoping to escape the memories of that haunted place. Yet her dreams were still haunted by whispers, faint music, and shadows that felt as familiar as her own heartbeat. At times, she would wake in the middle of the night, feeling as if she had been back at Willowbrook, wandering through its eerie ruins and hearing the voices of Evelyn, Thomas, and the others who had been bound there. Her life went on, filled with distractions and attempts to forget, but Willowbrook would not let her go so easily. She had taken up a job as a librarian, spending her days surrounded by books and ancient tales that reminded her too much of her own. In the quiet of the library, she sometimes felt as though someone were watching her, a cold presence just out of view. She would look up from her work, only to see nothing but empty aisles. Her colleagues noticed the change in her demeanor, the way her eyes would drift into distant thoughts, her occasional startle when a book fell from a shelf or a light flickered. One evening, as she was closing up the library, she heard the faint strains of a haunting melody drifting through the air. It was barely audible, but unmistakable, the same sorrowful tune she had heard at Willowbrook. She froze, her heart pounding as she strained to listen, her mind racing with memories of the manor. She followed the sound, winding through the empty library, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The melody led her to a corner of the library that was rarely used, where a collection of old, worn books lay untouched on dusty shelves. There, tucked away in the shadows, she found an old journal with no title on its cover. She hesitated, her fingers brushing the worn leather, before finally opening it. Inside, she found the familiar handwriting of Evelyn Connors, the woman who had once sacrificed herself to contain the curse of Willowbrook. It was Evelyn's private journal, a record of her thoughts and fears, her hopes for redemption and freedom from the curse that had bound her family to the manor. As she read, she felt Evelyn's presence more strongly than ever. The words seemed to come alive, filling the air around her, as though Evelyn herself were speaking to her. She could almost see Evelyn's face, hear her voice, pleading for an end to the curse. Emily knew then that she couldn't run from Willowbrook any longer. The curse would not rest, nor would the spirits bound to it, until she returned to confront what she had left behind. In the days that followed, Emily felt an unshakable resolve grow within her. She gathered supplies, planned her journey, and prepared herself for what she knew would be a final confrontation with the darkness that had haunted her family for generations. She packed only what she needed, leaving behind anything that might weigh her down or remind her of the life she might not return to. The journey back to Willowbrook was long and silent. She felt the weight of her ancestors' spirits around her, as if they were watching, waiting for her to fulfill the destiny they had left unfinished. She arrived at the village late in the evening, just as the sun was setting, casting an eerie orange glow over the forest. The villagers recognized her, though they said nothing, merely nodding in silent acknowledgement. They, too, seemed to understand that her return was inevitable. That night, Emily walked into the forest alone, the familiar chill settling over her as she made her way to the manor. The fog was thick, swirling around her like an embrace, and the shadows seemed to reach out, guiding her steps. She felt no fear this time, only a strange sense of purpose, as though every step brought her closer to the answers she had sought for so long. When she reached the clearing, she found the ruins of Willowbrook unchanged, just as desolate and haunting as she remembered. The air was still, and the melody that had haunted her dreams was now gone, replaced by a deep, resonant silence. She stepped into the ruins, her footsteps echoing against the crumbling stone, and felt the weight of centuries settle over her. In the center of the manor, she saw them, the spirits of Evelyn, Thomas, Adrian, and countless others who had been drawn to Willowbrook over the years. They stood in silence, watching her with eyes filled with sorrow and understanding. Each face bore the weight of the curse, the pain of lives interrupted and sacrificed to contain the darkness that lay within Willowbrook. Evelyn stepped forward, her form faint but unmistakable, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and hope. "You've come back," she said softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. Emily nodded, her voice steady. "I couldn't stay away. This curse, it's part of me, isn't it?" Evelyn's gaze softened, and she nodded. "It has been passed down through our family, binding each of us to this place. But you have the power to end it, if you're willing to make the sacrifice." Emily's heart pounded as she looked at the gathered spirits, the weight of their sacrifice heavy in the air. She knew what was being asked of her, understood that this was her chance to break the cycle that had haunted her family for so long. She took a deep breath, her resolve firm. "Tell me what I need to do." Thomas stepped forward, his expression grave. "To end the curse, you must bind your spirit to the land, as we did. But unlike us, you must do so willingly, with a heart free of fear or resentment. Only then can the curse be broken, and we can finally rest." Emily's mind raced, a mixture of fear and determination filling her. She had come this far, and she knew that leaving now would mean a life haunted by the curse, by the memories of those who had come before her. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her decision, and nodded. "I'm ready." The air grew cold as the spirits gathered around her, their forms flickering in the darkness. They began to chant softly, their voices weaving together in a haunting melody that filled the ruins with an otherworldly energy. Emily felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a lightness that seemed to lift her from the ground, as though she were becoming one with the very stones and soil of Willowbrook. As the chant grew louder, the spirits began to fade, their forms dissolving into the air, their voices growing faint. Emily felt a surge of energy, a final burst of life and purpose, as the curse was lifted, the darkness dissipating into the night. When the dawn broke, the ruins of Willowbrook Manor were empty, the spirits gone, their presence no longer felt in the air. Emily was gone, her sacrifice complete, her spirit forever bound to the land, but free from the curse that had plagued her family for generations. The villagers noticed a change in the forest after that night. The air felt lighter, the shadows less oppressive, and the haunting melody that had once filled the woods was no longer heard. Willowbrook Manor was at peace, its curse finally broken, and the spirits of those who had been bound to it were free to rest at last. And though Emily's story faded into legend, the forest remained, a silent guardian over the land where so many had sacrificed their lives. The curse of Willowbrook was no more, and those who ventured near felt only a quiet, peaceful presence, a final gift from Emily, who had given everything to bring an end to the darkness. In the years following Emily's final sacrifice, the once dark forest surrounding Willowbrook transformed in subtle, almost magical ways. The villagers noticed a new lightness in the air, a warmth that had never been felt before. The oppressive fog that had once clung to the trees was now replaced by a gentle mist that seemed to shimmer with morning sunlight. And the melodies, the sorrowful, haunting tunes that once drifted from the manor, were now silent. Instead, birdsong filled the air, brightening the forest with life. Though no one dared to rebuild on the grounds of Willowbrook Manor, it became a place of quiet reverence. Over time, a small path was carved through the forest, leading to a clearing where the ruins stood, now softened by nature's embrace. Wildflowers grew amidst the stones, vines twisted gently around the fallen walls, and the trees leaned protectively over the site, as if sheltering the memory of those who had given their lives to end the curse. Some villagers left offerings, wildflowers, stones, or small candles, as tributes to the lost spirits who had found peace. One crisp autumn day, a young boy named Samuel, curious and brave, ventured alone down the path to Willowbrook. The village elders had told stories of the curse, tales of a haunted manor where restless spirits roamed, but to Samuel, it was a story that called to him with a strange familiarity. He felt a pull toward the ruins, something he couldn't explain, a connection, almost as if he were revisiting a place he'd once known. His footsteps were light as he entered the clearing, gazing up at the trees that swayed gently in the breeze. In the center of the ruins, he found a single sturdy stone, a remnant of the manor's foundation. Etched into it were initials, faded but still legible, AC and AF, side by side, with a final addition, e.g., Emily's mark, left as a reminder of the one who had freed Willowbrook from its dark legacy. Samuel traced his fingers over the initials, feeling a strange sense of peace wash over him. He sat down beside the stone, gazing up at the sky as clouds drifted lazily overhead. For a moment, he thought he heard the faintest whisper, a soft, comforting voice, like the sound of a lullaby sung from a distance. It was soothing, almost protective, as if the spirits of the forest were watching over him. He closed his eyes, and in the quiet of that moment, he felt Emily's presence, a gentle warmth that seemed to wrap around him like a blanket. The feeling lingered, calm and reassuring, until it faded into the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. Samuel stayed a while longer, feeling a quiet peace in the forest, as though he were among friends he'd never met. When he finally left, he looked back at the ruins with a sense of gratitude, whispering a simple thank you to the spirits that had once protected the village. He felt as if he were saying goodbye to old friends, leaving with a promise that he would one day return to visit. In the years that followed, Samuel grew up, and Willowbrook's legacy transformed. The village, once steeped in fear and suspicion, began to view the forest as a place of healing and remembrance. The memory of Emily and the others who had sacrificed themselves remained alive, passed down through stories that now celebrated courage, loyalty, and redemption. Generations later, Willowbrook's story became a local legend, a tale told to children around campfires and at bedtime. The curse became a distant memory, and the forest itself a sanctuary for those seeking peace. The villagers found comfort in the story of the brave souls who had freed their home from darkness, honoring them with simple tributes, a wildflower here, a stone there, each left in quiet respect. And on quiet nights, when the moon hung low over the forest, those who visited the ruins claimed to feel a gentle presence, as if someone were watching over them. Some even spoke of hearing a faint, lullaby-like melody, a comforting song that drifted through the trees. It was a melody not of sorrow, but of peace, a reminder of the spirits who had found rest at last, and of the courage it took to bring an end to Willowbrook's haunting tale. The curse of Willowbrook was gone, but its story lived on, transformed from a tale of darkness into a legacy of light and remembrance, a final gift from Emily and the souls who had finally found peace.